as AI replaces more and more jobs, it's going to be imperative that you understand how to create value in the marketplace independent of a corporation. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about why it's so dang hard to escape a 9 to 5 job, what we'll call the misalignment loop, and how do you actually escape this misalignment loop in such a way that you go from a downward spiral where you become more and more entrapped and you lose more and more agency, to then how do you get on an upward spiral where every action that you take energizes you more and more, gives you more agency, more meaning, and helps you ensure that you become irreplaceable in the AI age. So we're going to discuss all of this. By the end of the video, you'll have a blueprint and a roadmap to say, this is where I am right now, and this is how I escape this misalignment loop and become irreplaceable. So let's dive right into it. So the first thing is value misalignment. So we can think of this as you have certain personal values, and if those are in conflict with the leadership of that organization, there will be inherent internal tension that you feel, inner conflict, suffering, pain, whatever you want to call it. This will arise out of this disconnect between the personal values that you hold and where the organization is going. And ultimately, if you're working for a corporation, there's a 99% chance that that corporation is doing bad in the world in some way, shape, or form. There's always externalities, second order effects, where if you do this, you actually cause harm to some other system. We're not going to go into that today, but what I want to say here is that when you are in this state of value misalignment, there's this self-reinforcing loop where the more that the values are misaligned, the less meaning you feel. The less meaning you feel, the more you feel inner tension and conflict. The more inner tension and conflict you feel, the more misaligned you feel. And we're going to be going over a couple of these key terms throughout this video. But the key terms are, how much agency do you feel? How much sense of participation and engagement do you feel with that thing? And these factors will cause cognitive dissonance. And so kind of the core concept here is agency. And when you are in values misalignment, you have less agency. Your agency is literally being diminished. And so this weakens your motivation. You have less reason to take initiative because it feels futile. It feels like it's going in opposition of this company. What we're going to be talking about is how agency is the key to acting meaningful in the world. There's been a lot of cognitive science, 4E cognitive science to be specific, done by John Vervaeke and other cognitive scientists that have shown that our sense of agency, our sense of like ability to act in an arena. So we can think of an arena as like, there's these different arenas that we're playing with. There's maybe the job market arena, the corporation arena, the organizations are like these environments, and we have this relationship with that environment where either we have high agency or low agency. The higher the agency that we have, the more meaning we feel in life. And ultimately, given that we are in a meaning crisis in the West, more and more people are, depressed, suicidal, anxious. There's a lot of different symptoms and things in our society that are showing us that there's a meaning crisis. And therefore, I believe what is most important is getting at this meaning, this sense of meaning in life. Not what is the meaning of life on a macro level, but the meaning in our lives. How do we find meaning in our lives? This is going to be individual and personalized to every single person. And so ultimately, what we want to optimize for is agency. The more agency that we have, the more meaning that we feel. I feel 100x more meaning in my life right now than I did a month ago. And it's because I was in a 9 to 5 job a month ago. My agency was low. I was being told what to do. And I get that not everyone gets the privilege of being able to shift towards this. But the reason I'm making this video is because I believe by sharing this message, by helping people understand these dynamics, hopefully over time, more and more people will be able to feel the tremendous meaning that comes from increased agency. So I think if anything in our lives, if we're in a job and we're noticing that our sense of agency is decreasing, that's a major red flag, and we should figure out, how do I make sure that and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to leave the company, but inside of the company, how do you get more agency? And something that ties in with agency hand in hand is reduced participation. When we lack agency, it's kind of like a reciprocal feedback loop, right? So the less agency we have, the reduced participation we have, and the less participation, the less we are participating in a system, the less agency we feel. And so the more we have, or rather, the less agency and participation that we feel, the more we will withdraw And so the dynamics of 9 to 5 work is that a lot of us in the 9 to 5 jobs have completely withdrawn. We've kind of given up because the agency is low, participation is low, sense of meaning is low, and we just feel like I can't really control this. There's no other way to live. I can't really make money in any other way. And so we withdraw from this deep engagement and participation, and this loss of participatory knowing is what has caused a meaning crisis, as John Vervaeke has talked about extensively in his lecture series, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. And we can think of this like the more we have participatory knowing, this is both something that's valuable for the 9 to 5, but also for wisdom in spirituality, if you will. One of the core insights of all the wisdom traditions is that the more we participate and engage with reality, the more we get feedback, and we can get in this optimal grip, this optimal relationship with reality, where the more we're engaging, the more it's transforming us, and that is what creates meaning. And so I really believe that the core thing to understand, the core thing to integrate from this entire video is this: when you are a passive observer of your life, you're going to feel more depressed, you're going to feel less meaning, you're not in a good situation. When you feel a sense of agency and participation, and you're interacting with the world and getting feedback, and in that interaction with the world, you're interacting with the world is interacting with you, and it's changing you as a person. This process is the very thing that creates joy, fulfillment, purpose, mission, meaning, wisdom. And so therefore, getting in this increased level of agency and participation is the most important thing in your life. And if you don't, you will experience cognitive dissonance. You will experience this large gap between your aspirational self and your actual reality. This will create psychological strain because you're holding these two opposing poles at the same time. And you'll feel more and more misaligned. And the longer that you stay, the core idea is the longer you stay in that state, the harder it is to get out of it. And so literally, like, I've worked 5 different 9 to 5 jobs in different tech companies. And every time I was in it, I don't think I've stayed in a job longer than 12 months. Because after 12 months, I just feel this value misalignment, this strain. I feel this cognitive dissonance. And it's like, if I stay in this, I know I'm just going to get stuck. It's kind of like that frog metaphor, where if you boil a frog, it won't try to jump out of the water because it's slowly, because it's not a rapid jump, the water's slowly getting warmer. That's kind of like what it's like to be in a 9 to 5 job. It's a little bit misaligned, and over time it just gets slowly misaligned until you're literally catatonic and you don't have any agency over your life, but you can't do anything about it either. That's the worst possible scenario. And so with that being said, participation and agency are the lifeblood of a purposeful existence, and you must cultivate them at all costs. That is really the essence of what I'm trying to say. So how do you break the cycle? Any small action that you can take to feel greater participation and agency in your life is going to help you break the cycle. So figure out, tune into yourself and ask, what is it that brings me alive? What is it that drains me? And if there's something that brings me joy and aliveness, if you can just commit to doing 30 minutes of that per day. If you work a 9 to 5, you don't have to, I understand people's situations are complex. I'm not saying just go and quit your 9 to 5 right now. What I'm saying is that your life becomes infinitely better. You feel more empowered, more agentic, and more meaning in life when you cultivate that sense of agency. And so if you take 30 minutes before work or 30 minutes after work to cultivate that sense of agency, and I'm not saying hustle, work harder. No, not at all. The hustle culture mentality tends to come with this stoic ideal of just repress all of your emotions, put economic success over personal needs. And that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about actually tuning into your personal needs, but in a new way. Rather than saying I'm tired, my need is I need to watch TV right now. Don't get me wrong, I watch TV all the time. But what I'm saying is if you tune into that, it's emotional interoception is kind of the technical term for it, but you turn into these internal signals in your body, and maybe it's what is it that would truly inspire me right now. For a long time in my life, that was writing Substack articles. I would write so many different Substack articles on philosophy, consciousness, meditation, all of this stuff. And I loved it. It brought me so much aliveness. I never made like any money from that, but it brought me aliveness. And I don't think I would be where I am today recording this video if it wasn't for those 100 Substack pieces that I wrote, or that like ebook that I published that, maybe got 30 sales. But the act of writing a book was just entirely meaningful. And so figure out what it is that brings that sense of aliveness and commit to 30 to 60 minutes of it every single day. For me, that's these videos. So every single day, the first thing I do before I do any other work, I record these. So it's actually gotten to a point where like from like 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. I record YouTube videos and I learn systems and I engage in this process of recording and getting better and sharing my ideas. And then over time I get better at it, but I also feel myself changing. I'm becoming more expressive and creative, and that is bringing me alive. I'm feeling like I'm participating in this process of trying to express these core ideas that I'm thinking about, even though I don't want to. Like, I feel resistance every single morning to this process. Like, a lot of times, like, another YouTube video today. Dang, this is gonna... And then I press record, and within, like, 3 minutes, I'm, like, smiling from cheek to cheek, right? And so it's, like, it's hard. We have to, like... Stephen Pressfield says that the pro feels the resistance but does it anyway, right? The pro takes their work more seriously. So the difference between the amateur artist and the pro artist, and you can say, like, YouTube is an art, like, expressing ideas philosophically is an art. Your work, everyone's work is a form of art, or at least I think it should be, in the broadest sense of the word art, in that there's some creative decision making going on. And the professional sits down and faces the resistance, and the resistance never goes away. This was a kind of a flip switching moment for me. The resistance never goes away. I will always, every single morning for the rest of my life, whatever I choose to do, I will always feel resistance to it. And to try to turn pro is to sit down every single morning and say, okay, here's the resistance. What actions do I need to take to be creative? And there's that classic quote of, I only write when I'm creative, and I'm creative every single morning at 9 a.m. It's just this idea that when you sit down and you create the conditions for it, it will come. You will feel resistant to it, but once I press record for this video, something switches in me and I start talking and words start coming out. And I don't know where these words are coming from. It's almost like a spiritual thing. It's like, I don't know what the next word is that I'm going to say. Sure, I have some planning with the hook and the outline of the video, but once that is done, like, I kind of just let it happen. And so I would like to close this out with, this road is hard, but it is the only road. And it will look different for everyone. I'm not trying to prescribe you a specific way of living. I'm trying to prescribe that you listen to the genuine internal signals of your being, and you honor those and you stay in integrity with those in a way that brings you so much aliveness and meaning, that it would be hurt too much to be in a misalignment loop, that you get yourself out of it. So I hope this was valuable. And thank you so much for watching this. I really appreciate you. And stay tuned for more.